Welcome to Integrated. This is the podcast where we seek to bridge the gap between the intellect and the will so that we can grow as disciples of Christ, surrendering all that we are and all that we have to the truth. Hey, you guys, it's me, Angela Erickson. Thank you so much for joining me today for a live episode, actually, to talk about the big elephant in the room that I guess it's not really an elephant, everyone's talking about it, but to talk about all this stuff going on with the Mass of the Ages. Does the traditional Latin Mass need a rebrand? So I hope that you enjoy this episode. Thanks for joining me. It's really nice to see so many of you guys joining me already. If you haven't already liked this episode, please just give it a like. And make sure you're subscribed to my channel. I have like almost 2,000 followers on Twitter. And if like half of you guys subscribe to my channel, it would make like seriously the world of a difference. So, and make sure you share this because I think this is a conversation we need to have, right? I thought about inviting other people to come on to talk about this. And the reason I chose not to is I didn't want it to turn into like, I guess I just didn't want this episode to be something where we just all kind of win all in on something else. I really want to be nuanced about this because I'm very blessed to be friends with some of the people over at the Mass of the Ages. But I also have friends that are very critical of the work that they're doing at Mass of the Ages. And so I want to do my best to represent both sides because I think that there are things valid on both sides. And I feel like right now we are talking right past each other. Hey, Kevin, thanks for joining us. It's nice to see you here. And of course, Lauren, you're the best. And obviously, the necessary conversation we need to be having right now is about tacos because it is Tuesday. So I hope you guys are enjoying some tacos and margaritas today. Oh, thanks. By the way, I would love to learn how to play my guitar. I've had that since I was 15. So don't know how to play that yet. But if somebody wants to teach me, great. Maybe, I think I've said this before, maybe I'll do an episode where somebody teaches me how to play my guitar when I'm done learning how to cross stitch with Darren, which, by the way, we will be doing our cross stitching episode, I believe, next week. So make sure you're subscribed so you get notified. You can have just a chill night hanging out with me and Darren while I learn how to cross stitch. Hey, Shelby, thanks so much for coming in here. It's really great to see you. Anyway, yeah, so I just really want to have a nuanced conversation because I have good friends that are very critical of what Mass of the Ages is doing, and I have really good friends, including people on Mass of the Ages. And for me personally, I love the work that they're doing. But I think that there are maybe some things that we should be talking about more. Yeah, Lauren was all about the cross-stitching episode, so excited. So anyway, let's just begin, okay? My initial reaction when I was seeing what they were saying about branding the traditional Latin Mass, and this is where I feel like we're kind of talking past each other. They're not really saying that they want to rebrand the traditional Latin Mass. You don't brand the Mass of the Ages, right? A good friend of mine, we were talking about this, and she's pretty critical of the work that they're doing. And she noted this, like, you don't get to, it's pretty, I don't know, maybe it might be considered arrogant to say you can rebrand the traditional Latin Mass. And here's where I'm going to say, I don't think that's what they're saying. I could be wrong, but I don't think that they're saying that. I think what they're saying is that there is kind of this persona associated with traditionalism. And that's really unfortunate because the persona is not necessarily a great one. And if I'm being totally honest, one of the biggest reasons I did not go to a traditional Latin Mass for a long time was because I felt like traditionalists were pushy, arrogant, contrived. I didn't feel like there was enough room for versatility. Now, is that, or I don't know if versatility is necessarily even the right word, but just like there wasn't enough space to be different, right? Like you had to fall in line with everything and you had to know everything. And we're not all there. Like we are all learn constantly. That's the thing that I love about Catholicism. I think Catholicism is so beautiful because you get to spend your whole life learning about Catholicism, Like for the person who loves learning, Catholicism is perfect because there are always devotions you can learn about. There's always new history. There are always saints you can learn about. There's so many things there are layers, right? And we get to spend our whole lives peeling back the layers. And there have been times, I'm just being honest, and this is my experience, and I pray that this is not everyone's experience. But my experience has been that you're like not allowed to divert very much. And if you do, if you fall out of line, you are not considered like a real Catholic in some of these circles. There's a reason we have stereotypes. Okay. Stereotypes and tribalism in general, like this is just an aside, but tribalism in general is really just humans' way of sort of like designating and determining if a group of people are safe or not, and that just is like a survival mechanism. It's not inherently evil, it's a survival mechanism. But there is tribalism that becomes it's not so much a survival mechanism, it is more of an us versus them mechanism. It's a mechanism used to divide, and I don't think that's where we want to be in the Catholic Church right now. We are eating our own and we have to stop. Like I said, I'm very blessed to have friends that disagree on a lot of this stuff. And I love them. And I love that I can have these harder conversations with them. We need more friendships like that. We need more friendships where we can have hard conversations with each other. And it's not vindictive. Uh, it's not arrogant. You are genuinely and authentically listening to the other person. I think we need to learn how to actively listen to one another, because we're talking right past each other. So that's the first thing I will say is I don't think that I don't think Mass of the Ages is sitting there saying that they want to rebrand the traditional Latin Mass. You just can't do that. It's the Mass of the Ages, and it's beautiful, and it doesn't need branding in and of itself. And what I found interesting was that in Cameron's, for anyone who actually watched the video, Cameron sort of sets it up with this distinction between marketing and branding. So according to Cameron, marketing is really how you can get information about the traditional Latin Mass out, which is true. I mean, that's basically what marketing is. It's same with social media. It's like you're looking for different channels to disseminate information, right? But branding is how something feels. And that's why different brands have, I mean, here's the sad reality, and maybe people aren't going to like this. And this is just my degrees in advertising. Everything is marketed to you, and every archdiocese has its brand. Every church has its brand. Our church has its brand. That's why like there is a certain feel to a lot of these new, and I'm not saying that this is a good thing or a bad thing. It's just what we live in because we are feeling creatures, right? Like there's something to that. It's not, I don't think we can completely sever the two and just say like, you just tell people about this stuff and they're going to get it, because that's not true. We are, again, integrated human beings. We're body, soul. We have our minds to contend with as well, but a lot of us can assent to something intellectually, but not be moved in our will and in our heart to do something, right? I think we've all had that experience. And so it is kind of important that you create a feeling, and it needs to be an accurate feeling. I'm not saying we need to manipulate people. That's wrong. That's evil. Manipulating people is evil. But to show how something feels and convey that is really important. That's why I like the work that the Mass of the Ages is doing. I think that they are creating beautiful video content in a time when there's just so much ugly and they're showing something beautiful in a way that people can understand, and they're helping you feel, and they're conveying something that we're hoping you feel, right? Like we all want to feel that the Mass is beautiful. We all want people to understand that it is literally heaven and earth meeting in perpetuity, like Christ on the cross. And he's coming to us this way. We get to be in communion with him. And how beautiful, great, and absolutely awesome, in like the most traditional sense of the word. How awesome is that? We have this incredible gift. And do we see that? Do we realize it? Do we feel that? Because intellectually, I know that. I'm grateful I know that. There are a lot of people who don't understand that. But am I feeling it? There are people who are just more inclined to feeling. That because that's how God made them. And I think that's also kind of the missing piece in this whole conversation. And I was going back to this perception that we have kind of the sour traditionalist. They certainly exist. I mean, I think we would be naive to say, the stereotype of kind of the curmudgeon-y, crabby traditionalist, that's just not at all accurate. I mean, there is kind of a segment of Catholicism that's like that. That's why Catholic Twitter is so sometimes vile, and just not everyone's favorite. We joke about it because it's true. Like if it wasn't true, we wouldn't joke, and we wouldn't joke about it. I mean, so here we are. It's like I don't understand. I just feel like we talk about everything as if it's either or. And I don't think that it is. I think it's both and, right? Like multiple things can be true at one time, right? And yes, exactly what they were saying, exactly what I'm saying. I just think we have to come at it with an approach of like more of a both and right now, and understanding that the point is not to manipulate people, but I think, and this could be somewhat a valid criticism of kind of releasing an episode like this talking about branding a movement. Maybe this is like, I mean, I think on one hand, you're like, okay, you're trying to be more transparent than a lot of places. A lot of places are going to be branding themselves, and they're just not going to tell you about it because why? They don't really need to tell you about it, but they are going to try and make you feel a certain way about something. That's the point of art of any kind. It's a part of any organization, any business, anything. And so I don't know, there's that part of it, but like maybe do they need to use that type of language and coming out with it? I don't know. I think that could be discussed, and maybe it should be discussed. Do we use different language to convey something similar in a way that doesn't make people feel like they're being manipulated, or that the team over at Mass of the Ages is selling something, right? Because they're not selling anything. But I think what their goal is to sort of help get rid of this perception that all traditionalists are kind of crabby. I know that's not true. I don't think I'm crabby. A lot of the people that I'm friends with are just like very happy, cheerful, holy Catholics. And so then the next thing that I wanted to talk about was like, how about we start discussing our inner dispositions just in general? Like, this is the biggest problem that I see, whether you're on the side of being like hardcore Novus Ordo or hardcore traditional Latin Mass Catholic. There's something going on with our inner dispositions. Okay. And is that aligning with what we're doing publicly? Right. And now switching up the language to attract people has an inauthentic feel. And yeah, that's kind of, it would feel that way now because they already came out talking about it in terms of marketing and branding. And like I said, and I think I said this somewhere on Twitter, like my background is in advertising, so I understood what they were getting at. It was being used in a very technical way. But I can totally understand why people reading that who aren't coming at it from that perspective are looking at that and saying, so you're trying to manipulate me and sell me on something. Like that's not what I want. I don't want to be like I don't want to be somebody who's just being manipulated into something. And Shelby, like all things to argue about, yes, those arguing, they just didn't like the word. That's it. Okay. So all of this talk is like we're again talking right past each other. I think a lot of us, and I know that's not what we want, right? Hey, Enoch, we need to stop arguing about semantics on everything. Let's have an honest conversation and talk about, is there a problem in our own movements on both sides? Because let's be honest, I mean, there are people over within more of the Novus Ordo end of things that also can be really kind of mean and awful. And I don't think that represents all of people from the background of Novus Ordo, like people who love going to the Novus Ordo. I just don't. I don't think that that's a fair assessment. I mean, I've grown up going to a Novus Ordo. I go to a quote unquote reverent Novus Ordo, and people will argue that that's just not good enough. But I assent to the church teaching on this, and if this is an acceptable liturgy right now, then so be it. But I'm going to try and find the most beautiful one that I can, the one that I think is not being abused, where there aren't all these things going on that are out of line within the rubrics of the Mass. That's how I feel. Would I love to see, personally, would I love to see every Mass a traditional Latin Mass? Yeah, I think that would be amazing. But I think we would be naive to think that all traditional Latin Masses are all totally 100% reverent, that they're all perfect. They're not. And I think that's something we have to be honest about too. Yes, and Shelby, I know you're agreeing with me. I think we're both in agreement here. So anyway, I just wanted to point some of those things out because I love what the Mass of the Ages team is doing. And I can also understand why some of my friends are like, sorry, Veronica's moving my guitars. I might have to go grab her here in just a second. But yeah, I mean, the language, we can talk about that all day, but like, what are the dispositions of our hearts? And is that coming out in what we're doing publicly? Because that's what's the most attractive, right? Like, that's what is our brand as Catholics? Like, if we're going to talk about it in this sense, what is our brand as a Catholic? Do we have to talk about it in branding terms necessarily? No. But my question is are we really showing people that there is love and charity here within the church? Let me grab Veronica. It wouldn't be an episode without a crying baby. Anyway, so I wanted to point that out. I want to at least give some insight. I have been having conversations with people the last day or two who have taken issue with some of this language, and I can understand why. I don't necessarily. I don't think it's necessarily the best language, but I don't particularly take issue with it because I don't think they're trying to rebrand the Mass. I think they're trying to find new ways to kind of shift people's perception of hardcore traditionalists. I started to tell about how, like, there was a whole debate on Twitter the other day about whether or not your rosary counts if you're not kneeling while you pray it. And it was like, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Nothing is ever good enough unless you do it so perfectly. Like, I probably, in a lot of minds of these types, I shouldn't be doing this. Because it's extra and it's not, I'm not like pregnant and barefoot in my kitchen right now making dinner, or getting the whole family praying on our knees, including the 2-year-old or something. I don't know. There is kind of that segment of Catholicism, and we have to contend with that. We have to wrestle with it. So what's the best way that we do that? Do we just kind of ignore them and like stop feeding that? Do we start to have honest conversations about like what real Catholic living looks like? Because it's not perfect. Yes, we should strive to be perfect, but that doesn't mean in our exterior, all the things that we're doing. It means our interior disposition is aligned with God's will, and that we are full of love and charity, and of hope, joy, peace, you guys. And like we're at peace with each other. I mean, we can't be at peace within the church. We can't even be at peace with our brother and sisters. So that's what I want to see. That needs to be more of our, like, how we present ourselves. I just think we are going to draw more people into the truth of Catholicism, the beauty of Catholicism. And we have to acknowledge too at the same time that Catholics are all different. We are all wildly different. God made us differently. All the saints are different. And any parent knows that all of your children are different, and your relationship with all of your children is different. And so too with God, right? And so the way we love and interact with our children is going to be different. Now, there are baselines, right? Like, we have different things that we do together as a family, and that is our baseline, and it is a requirement, and there are certain things involved in being a part of our family. But that doesn't change the fact that my children are different, and the way that they interact with me is going to be different, and it's not perfect because we're human. So anyway, I just think those are things that we have to really focus on when we're talking about What does it mean to draw people into something like traditionalism? Are we joyful Catholics? Are we open to the Holy Spirit? Are we open to people who maybe aren't doing every single devotion we think absolutely needs to be done? But are they faithful, and are they loving? Are they loving their family? Are they loving the church? Do they love Jesus? Do we talk like we love Jesus? Do we talk like we love the church? Do we talk like we want a relationship with all of the saints and we want to go to heaven? We want to lead our families to heaven. Are we talking that way, or are we bickering on Twitter about every single little thing because nobody is as perfect as somebody else, right? Um it needs to stop. And I want to see the mass of the ages team succeed. I want to see more traditional Latin masses. Charismatic trads, I know. Could it happen? Could it happen? Um, I just think I'm tired of feeling like we're always taking shots from like every side. No one's ever good enough, right? And that's not that's the stuff that's going to kill the church. It's not going to be the Novus Ordo masses that's going to kill the church. It's our interior dispositions and how we're treating each other. The way we sort of come away from maybe the harms that have been done in my mind because of the last 60, 70, 80 years of things that have been going on in the church. It's not getting rid of the Novus Ordo isn't going to solve everything. Can we be honest? Can we be honest that getting rid of the Novus Ordo is not going to solve all the problems? I'm not going to say it's not going to make a difference. It absolutely will. It's hopefully going to change how we view the Eucharist. I mean, I do believe lex orandi, lex credendi. I do believe that. But more than that, we need to work on ourselves. Lack of charity will absolutely kill the movement. And I'm glad to see that you're here, Cameron. This is what's problematic right now. And I think we need to stop talking past each other. We need to start being open to more of a both and with each other. And two, the last thing I wanted to add is I want us to consider. I've been seeing some people feeling like you have these very young, exuberant Catholics who just think they're going to come in and take over and do whatever they want. and they know better, because there's kind of that youthful naivete that we can all experience where we come into something and I'm not even going to say that the Mass of the Ages team is being bombastic or anything, because they're not, in my opinion. But I have seen this criticism cropping up from some people who are like, we've been doing this forever, and you think you're going to do this better than we have been for however many years. And this is the only thing that I want to say to that is I do think it's important that we look to other people. We like to make fun of boomers and the boomer generation because there's just been a lot of stuff that has happened since as they get older, and I feel like they've had a bit more positions of power. There's something to that. But there are a lot of people who are wise and have been doing this for a long time, and I think it's worthwhile to talk to them about some of the things that they have seen. That's one thing I talk about. Some of my friends that have some criticism, and yeah, some of them are old enough to be my parents, or I'm pretty close in age with their kids, and I think that's great. Like, they provide a perspective that's more, sometimes, not always, but sometimes, like, more nuanced or more measured, because they've seen more than I have. And I think that's just important in any human relationship. Like, I have friends that are significantly older than me because they have wisdom, right? And I want to live a life that has been touched by wisdom. And I think it's so much easier to learn from other people who are doing a good job and living out lives of holiness than it is for me to try and make my way on my own. And so I think that that's an important component. We need to be having more conversations. We don't necessarily need to talk about everything in a technical sense, I don't think. But the reality is that we do have there is a perception about traditionalists, and I think that we need to rectify that. And I'm not sure what the best way to do that is, if we need to just completely ignore these types. But the one component that is essential is that we ourselves live lives of holiness, that we ourselves are exuding peace and joy, hope, charity, all of the gifts of the Holy Spirit, and that we are willing to understand that and accept that people are in different places with God. They have different relationships with God. And yes, we have the Mass and it's beautiful, but not everyone is going to respond the same way. And so talking about creating something that will help draw those feeling types into the church, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You can't intellectualize everybody into the traditional form of Catholicism. You just can't. A lot of people have to be touched by their hearts. And you're not going to be reaching people that way if their perception is that Catholicism is just full of crabby, sour people. You bring more people in with honey than vinegar, right? So anyway, I hope that this was, I don't know, more nuanced than maybe some of the stuff that you've seen. I think I'm probably gonna have to go because my sweet little Veronica, she's just not having it. But if you guys have any comments, please leave them below. Sorry, she's done. I would love to hear from you. Feel free to message me. And Jeff, thanks for joining. I didn't see you. But yeah, we need more of a seat at the table approach. So anyway, and shutting people out is not helpful either. I agree. So let's get better at having these conversations. Let's learn to be more nuanced and listen actively and to strive for lives of holiness within ourselves before we start attacking everybody else. And let's learn to be more charitable too in how let's think more charitably about what people are trying to say instead of approaching everything in an accusatory manner, right? That's the last thing I'll say. I see a tendency on every side for people to assume the worst in what everyone is saying all the time. And that's not helpful for constructive dialogue either. So she's very, must be, yeah. Girl needs a nap. She's like Elijah. She needs a nap and some food and she'll probably be feeling better. So anyway, but thanks so much, you guys, for joining this broadcast. If you're not already, please subscribe, share this. I would love to hear from you, hear your thoughts if this maybe has helped you in any way, or maybe you're seeing this a little bit more nuance and understanding kind of on both sides. I just want more conversation. I want things to be more constructive because I love you guys and I love the church and I love people and I have great friends that are very in a lot of disagreement on this. So I think it's important we have this conversation and we learn to meet each other where we're at a little bit more. So anyway, thanks for joining me and God bless each and every one of you. Until next time.